Indeed, it is another edition of the Three Dog Thursday YouTube Roundtable. Hello there. Great to be with you. If you're only hearing us, as I like to say, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, come find the moving pictures on the YouTube Roundtable. Search for YouTube, search Three Dog Thursday. Come find us via social media link at Three Dog Thursday, etc. for the YouTube Roundtable. I am merely the somewhat capable host. By the way, this is a joint interview. So if you're going, wait a minute, this is also on the Powers on Sports podcast. That's because my man Jason Powers from right here in the Tampa Bay area is also aboard. And so this is a joint interview on both of our shows, a little cross promotion, a little cross pollination. We love that. Let's welcome in Jason Powers right now here on Three Dog Thursday and on his own podcast, the Jason Powers on Sports podcast. How are you, my friend?
How are you, sir? Appreciate it. We're doing a little innovative work in the podcasting world, a little simulcast along many platforms.
I love the fact that we're sharing, and we're sharing with Marquis Johns, senior writer, BigFightWeekend.com. He and I are part of the BigFightWeekend.com website and the Big Fight Weekend podcast. So why don't we make it a table for three here on the YouTube Roundtable, because we've got some boxing and some Canelo Alvarez to talk about. Marquis Johns, Weak Sauce Radio. How do you feel here on the YouTube Roundtable Three Dog Thursday? And also, we're doubling your paycheck on the Powers on Sports podcast as well at the same time. Marquis, how you feeling?
Pretty good, TJ. Checks in the post, apparently. I love this integration sensation of these collaborations going on here. I love this.
You're like Don King with all of the words. Only in America.
Only in America.
Would love you to know that he's still been in communication with Don King Promotions. They're still trying to promote fights, and Don King is literally 80, what, Marquis? 89 years old, still promoting fights, Jason Powers. It's crazy that Only in America is still around. And Bob Arum is still around promoting, and he's, what, 88, 89?
I think he turns 90 this year, actually. He's 90, up there, too.
It is crazy about all this. All right, so plenty of boxing coming up. Let's begin, though, on Three Dog Thursday with what we left off on this podcast, and Jason has already been talking about it on Powers on Sports a little bit, and that's the NFL Draft. So I am going to right away here share the screen as the NFL Draft took place, and Trevor Lawrence ends up going as the number one overall pick. Here he is, Trevor Lawrence with the Jacksonville Jaguars. That was not a big surprise. Lawrence to the Jaguars, who are going to be bad. Zach Wilson to the New York Jets as the second pick and the second quarterback. Not a huge surprise. But let's jump right in. Jason Powers, as we take a look here, the San Francisco 49ers go with Trey Lance, the North Dakota State quarterback, instead of Mac Jones, the Alabama quarterback, instead of Justin Fields, the Ohio State quarterback. I just asked Brian Edwards, our handicapper, his opinion in the previous segment. Jason, your opinion about that move?
I don't have a big problem with it. I mean, the consensus was this draft was going to start at number 3 with the Niners. What were they going to do? Were they going to go with a more ready-made guy, Mac Jones, who they thought might be ready to go week 1? Or are they more looking down the road? Trey Lance might need a half a year to get ready. You still got Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco. Obviously, the question was going to be, are you going to keep Garoppolo? If you draft Mac Jones, they're probably going to trade Garoppolo. With them keeping Trey Lance, you're going to keep Garoppolo. To me, I think it's probably the right thing to do. Is if you think Lance is going to be better 3 years down the road, then keep Garoppolo for another year. So I don't have a big problem with what they do. And Garoppolo's been a winning quarterback for the Niners when he's been healthy.
All right, fair enough on that. Jason and I will kind of go back and forth on the draft. Marquis is here for the boxing and much more. Although Marquis is a Detroit Lions long-suffering fan from the state of Michigan and from the Motor City, do you have any remarks, any cheap shots that you want to take at your Lions right now off of this draft? Or are you somewhat optimistic right now? They went offensive line, Penei Sewell, right? The big offensive lineman from Oregon to help protect Jared Goff, Marquis.
Yeah, TJ, we went offensive lineman again because the offense was offensive last year. And the problem with this Lions team is that they have so many missing pieces and they need so many of them back. The one thing that they at least got with an offensive lineman, at least, you would think to have at least one guy they could run the football behind, which is what they didn't have at all for about half the season last year, Bucs game included. So we'll see how that all plays out. But to piggyback back off your point with Trey Lance going to the Niners, guys, I really think they messed this up. They needed a guy that's already ready to go. They can't if they're playing with Garoppolo for half a year, then they're going to slide this guy in there. These guys will be fired the next season. They ain't going to be able to find out how this guy's really going to play out. But the only caveat I will get mentioned with Trey Lance is North Dakota State. Let's be honest, guys, that's a feeder system in a JUCO program, so it's about as much of a pro offense as you can get. So we'll see how it turns out.
All right, and we should make mention here again with San Francisco. They were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, but to Marquis's point, a bad year last year. Yeah. Lance, a bit of a risk, Jason Powers, with only 17 games played and at the lower division, the FCS level, not the powerful FBS with all of the SEC, the Big 12, the Big 10. This is a bit of a reach. It's a bit of a risk, and if it doesn't work in the short term, Kyle Shanahan, the coach, may be in trouble. I don't think John Lynch, the GM, is in trouble, as I've discussed on some other interviews, some other places. But Kyle Shanahan, the coach, might be in trouble. What do you think, Jason?
You're right. This is a defining pick for Shanahan. I mean, he had the blunders with the Falcons in the Super Bowl. The other issues. I mean, this is a big move, and I think Lance won them over more on the mental side of the game, and he's everybody said he's incredibly smart. He's incredibly a teammate, a great teammate, all that kind of good stuff. I think, and you're right, it is a risk. There's no doubt. He's had the least number of pass attempts as any kid who's ever been drafted that high. All right. Again, you're listening to the Simulcast podcast, Three Dog Thursday podcast, Powers on Sports podcast, TJ, Marquis Johns. Let's get to TJ, your wheelhouse, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Your thoughts. He's wearing old school Bucko Bruce orange shirt.
Again, we should say, if you're only hearing us on Three Dog Thursday, if you're only hearing us on the Powers on Sports podcast, come find the YouTube channel, because the boys can testify. Yes. I am rocking old school Bucko Bruce tonight on the interview at the time that we're taping this on the YouTube roundtable. Come see it just for Bucko Bruce. But go ahead. Question,
absolutely,
please.
Yeah, definitely find us on YouTube. We'll have this whole roundtable segment. Let's talk about the Buccaneers. First round, people were wondering, the Bucs maybe trade up, trade out of the first round. They stay where they're at 32. Joe Tryon from Washington falls in their lap. Tell us a little bit about Joe Tryon.
Well, the interesting thing is I don't get them all right. And Marquis is the first one to tell you that I sometimes don't even get half of them right when we start talking boxing. This is why I defer to him on Big Fight Weekend. But in 3 different mock drafts, which, again, it's a whole lot easier to do the mock draft when you're in the top 10. That's like shooting layups in basketball. Hey, I made 9 out of 10 layups. I made 10 out of 10 layups. Almost everybody can make layups. Step back to the free throw line and give me 9 out of 10, picking a mock draft pick at 20. Guys, picking a mock draft pick at 32 is like making a 40-foot Steph Curry shot, if we're talking about this. It's like getting in the ring with Canelo Alvarez. In 3 different mock drafts, I picked the Washington defensive end Joe Tryon on a hunch 2 ways. I didn't have any inside intel, Jason Powers, Marquis Johns, but I believe 2 things. You cannot have enough good pass rushers. I believe that guy was still going to be there, and the connection to Vita Vea, the Buccaneers' former number 1 pick defensive tackle from the University of Washington, where Joe Tryon is from. They were teammates for 1 season together back 3 years ago. Something just said to me that was going to be the pick, and sure enough, it was. The guy didn't play college football, Jason Powers, last year, as you know. He opted out for the COVID-19 shortened season, decided not to play, still ends up being a first-round pick. And look, he's got a great chance on a defense that's loaded to kind of work his way in and be a pass rusher. I love it here for Joe Tryon, Jason Powers, as the first pick of the Buccaneers, without a lot of eyes and scrutiny probably on him for the first season.
And Marquis, I'm going to get to you in 1 second. Let's go to the second round. Everybody thought the Buccaneers had a guy, a quarterback targeted potentially. A lot of people thought that they might go quarterback at the end of the first round. The Bucs, again, sit where they're at 64. Kyle Trask, the quarterback from Florida, falls to him at 64. To me, a perfect pick. And a comparison I came up with even before I heard Bruce Arians say, he reminded me a lot of Brad Johnson, which was the comparison by Jason Light and Bruce Arians. Big husky guy, was a backup, took advantage of his opportunity to play. 6'5", not the strongest arm. I think Kyle Trask could be a perfect fit in this Buccaneer offense 2-3 years down the road.
Well, let's just say this. This is like being in Marquis Johns' world here. We're all just visiting. Same thing for Kyle Trask with sitting behind, oh, by the way, Tom Brady.
Right.
Just sit back and learn. And this may not even be a guy, Jason and Marquis, and for the audiences hearing us on Three Dog Thursday and the Powers on Sports podcast, he may not play at all in 2021, and he may not be called upon in 2022. They may have Tom Brady the next 2 years with Kyle Trask sitting behind him. And who knows what happens? The elbow could give out, the shoulder could give out. We don't know. But he is Trask in a perfect situation to sit back and learn from arguably the greatest of all time. So if you're not going to get picked in the first round and you're not going to like Cincinnati, a perennially horrible team, Cleveland, pick one that's usually awful. This is the next best thing. If you're not going to get to go and play, is sit back behind Tom Brady. Marquise, I don't know what your thought is here, but the Gator fans I know, and we're around a bunch of them, all three of us guys, they're all elated with this pick for the Buccaneers. What about it, Marquise?
They are, TJ, and it's a fun pick because there's going to be a quarterback. It was just a matter of if and when. They didn't pick one in the first round because they're all gone. So they picked Kyle Trask when he was still there in the second round. I'm intrigued, TJ, to see if he's actually going to be around once all this goes around. Pretty much we're at the mercy of Tom Brady whenever he wants to retire or not. And obviously that's not this season or the season after that, it looks like personally. I'm intrigued about that. But if the comparisons, guys, is he's the next Brad Johnson, do you think they probably was going to draft someone a little more mobile, or were they just sit on Trask's arm maybe?
I think they're happy. Jason, what's your thought? I think they're happy to have him learn to be the same kind of pocket passer that Tom Brady is. What do you think, Jason Powers?
I agree. I think Bruce Arians is the Byron Leftwich. Bruce Arians mindset is pocket passer. They're not as much into the running quarterback, mobile quarterbacks as other organizations are. They believe in the downfield throws, and I think Kyle Trask showed he's got enough pocket awareness. That's the beauty. You have to have the pocket mobility. It's not the guy that can run around. It's the guy that can move around in the pocket, and Brady's always shown he can do that. Kyle Trask has shown he can do that at Florida. Doesn't have the strongest arm, but he's very cerebral and very accurate. That was the difference between him and a Davis Mills and Kellen Mond, those kind of guys. His accuracy is tremendous.
And we should say, again, he broke records at Florida, including the touchdown record in the SEC. So there's a lot of pedigree. And as you mentioned, he was a backup at Florida behind Felipe Franks. We were talking about that in the first segment of the Three Dog Thursday podcast. Yep. Again, we're simulcasting here, joint interview. It's also on the Powers on Sports podcast, Jason's podcast. So again, find both podcasts. But on Three Dog Thursday, we were talking about Trask sitting behind Felipe Franks and waiting for his chance. He even sat behind De'Aaron King, the Miami Hurricane and Houston Cougar quarterback, in high school. He is used to sitting back and waiting for a chance, and he's going to have to sit back with Tom Brady. Jason, go ahead.
Marquise, back to your Lions. It's a funny thing. Your GM, Brad Holmes, is a Tampa guy. Went to Chamberlain High School here in Tampa. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts of Dan Campbell and that mentality of building a rugged kind of team, a running team first? They brought in Anthony Lynn to be the coordinator. You draft Sewell. They like big bodies. What is your thought of the whole Dan Campbell regime coming in with a kind of a mindset of being a hard-nosed team?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he's able to do in this modern NFL, guys. He's talking about, bringing back the old-fashioned, double tight end, I formation, big jumbo package, run football game. That's cool. But it's 2021, guys. That 1987 stuff may or may not work in present day. But we'll see how that works out. The one thing that they did do, which I think was smart on their end, when they traded Stafford for Goff, at least Goff has the ability to at least move around somewhere a little bit, because Stafford at one point became immobile. And at this point, he's been running around for a decade, guys. He's tired. So I get it. And hopefully we'll see what Holmes and Campbell do with this. I'm actually optimistic, Jason. At this point, I have nothing else but hope, because it's been about 50 years running.
They hired Chris Spielman in that front office, and you know this, Marquise, a hard-nosed 1980s, 90s linebacker mentality. Campbell's out of that same mold. They are not going to get beat because of toughness or conditioning. They may get beat on lack of talent. They may get beat on Dan Campbell not knowing what he's doing as a coach. But Marquise, at least you're going to have a tough, play hard. I mean, that's what those guys are. Spielman in the front office and Campbell, the new coach, they know nothing else than to be bloody nose, dirty, whatever, to go fight you.
Yeah, that was the one thing that was missing actually honestly, guys, they haven't had a hard-nosed, quote-unquote, kind of guy probably since Buddy Ross, if we're being realistic here, guys. That's a long time ago. And that hard-nosed got
Bobby Ross,
yeah. Bobby Ross. Yeah, Buddy was the Arizona guy. That was his dad. But no, Bobby was in town, and that chased Barry out, and it's been like this ever since. Hopefully, the era with Campbell can just hopefully wipe away these last few years of Patricia, because Patricia was in over his head, guys, and it was just not good this last season whatsoever.
Well, and they had Jim Caldwell, and they made the playoffs. They had Rod Marinelli, who I love, and they had an 0-16 season. I got a stat. You want a stat? As we sit here on these two podcasts, on Three Dog Thursday and on the Powers on Sports podcast, no Detroit Lions fired coach, no one that they fired has ever been an NFL head coach again after they fired him. Not one. If that tells you, if you need any bigger neon billboard, Marquis knows this and Jason knows this, that if you're fired by the Lions, you're fired for the NFL. That is incredible.
That is a great stat.
I mean, you can go all the way back for the last 40 years, including Wayne Fonts, and I don't even know, Marquis knows the names. I mean, go all the way back to like Darryl Rogers and whoever
Moose Rogers.
Coached the Lions, whatever it was. None of them have ever gotten another NFL head coaching job after being ousted by the Detroit Lions. That's incredible, Jason.
That's
all right. As we wrap up the NFL, I'm gonna go to each of you guys. Give me a kind of surprise out of left field pick that you noticed in the first round. A lot of people were questioning the Raiders picking Alex Leatherwood as high as they did. Mayock and Gruden have seemed to have some issues in the first round the last couple of years. You know, you had the Mac Jones falling to New England at 15. Give me a pick that you really liked, or you said, what are they doing? TJ.
I'll give you real quick. Here that I loved the Philadelphia Eagles getting Devontae Smith. I've said on this podcast, I think Jason is a guest with you. I think I said it to my 13-year-old twins. Anybody else that would listen, I was walking around the neighborhood with a dog, saying it to the postman and whoever. Devontae Smith is the best receiver in this draft. So I love the Eagles pairing him with Jalen Hurts. Cincinnati is just Cincinnati. What are they doing? I know they want to put Jamar Chase, the receiver from the LSU Tigers, with Joe Burrow, the former LSU quarterback, but I did not understand passing on Devontae Smith, who I think is the better receiver. So there's a couple from me. Marquis, did you have any more surprises, or are you still just licking your wounds as a Lions fan that you're trying not to go 0-16? What's the deal?
Well, I'm still licking my wounds, TJ, but the one pick that made me excited actually was the fact that the Chicago Bears guys gave up their entire future for Justin Fields. And if that pick fails, guys, we won't be in last place in Detroit anymore, guys. That's just plain and simple.
I like that.
Well, the thing is, that picks, you know, Nagy and Ryan Pace's jobs are on the line. They had to make that move. As soon as Fields got past Denver at number 9, when they didn't take a quarterback, I think it's a great move. Who knows if he can play or not, but it shows the fan base, hey, we're going for it. We're willing to risk another, 2 years worth of number ones, which is okay. That's what you have to pay these days. If you're going to make a big move like that in the draft, you have to give up that second number 1 pick. And it's being shown that number 1 picks aren't nearly as valuable as we thought they used to be 10, 15 years ago. With the salary cap situation, you can reset after a year or two if a pick doesn't work out.
But how many more times do you get to screw it up if you're Ryan Pace, the GM, Matt Nagy as the coach? Because ultimately they traded for Mitch Trubisky and traded up a number 1 pick to move up 1 spot to take him, and didn't take Deshaun Watson or, oh, by the way, Patrick Mahomes when they traded up to take Mitch Trubisky. So who knows? All right, we'll turn this now to boxing real quick on both the Three Dog Thursday on the YouTube simulcast and also to the Powers on Sports podcast. No matter when or where that you're hearing us, come find the YouTube roundtable on this. We are looking on the YouTube roundtable. This is right in Marquis and Mai's wheelhouse. Canelo Alvarez in action Saturday night. The unified super middleweight 168-pound championships are on the line. Alvarez, multi-division world champ, arguably the biggest non-heavyweight name in the sport that's currently active. So Marquis, we come to you first here. We're going to talk a lot on Big Fight Weekend's podcast on bigfightweekend.com, building towards the weekend. But since we're here on Three Dog Thursday, we're here on Powers on Sports. Tell the audiences, plural, about Canelo and England's Billy Joe Saunders coming up quickly.
Absolutely, TJ. For those who have been under a rock, it's Canelo Fight Week, and he is in action in Dallas at Jerry World in front of 65,000 fans or so, taking on the undefeated Billy Joe Saunders as a unification bout for his version of. It's pretty much the belt on the line, guys. For at the 168 pounds is the WBO that Billy Joe Saunders has, the WBA and the WBC, which Canelo has. So they're going to try to merge all these pies together here for, this weekend, making it one step closer for unification at 168 that Caleb Plant has. And it's going to be a fun one, TJ. I'm looking forward to it, actually, mainly for the simple reason that the biggest guy in the sport, Canelo, is fighting again. This will be his second time this year already, TJ. We know guys who haven't fought since the pandemic took place. So
3 fights in 5 months for Alvarez, wow. December, February, and May. So he's been very active. And again, there's incentives financially for him to do that. Jason, we're also sharing the screen and showing the audience on the Three Dog Thursday YouTube roundtable and also the audio podcasts for Powers on Sports. We're showing them AT&T Stadium, where they will have Jason, Marquis, and the audience, as we also see the inside of the stadium, some 60,000 plus, probably closer to 65,000 or more, somewhat socially distanced, but most of it is huge crowd on the football field of the stadium and in the 4 levels of the stadium. They will have this fight, and it will be the largest crowd of anything post-COVID-19 pandemic to this point, including the NFL, including the Kentucky Derby, which last weekend had 50,000 people spread out at Churchill Downs for the horse race. This will have some 60, 65,000, Jason Powers. So it's kind of transcending boxing as we look on the screen here.
You guys are the boxing experts. Tell me about this Billy Joe Saunders. Is this guy a tomato can, or is he a legitimate threat to at least give Alvarez a test?
Marquis?
Well, if you're going to play a drinking game, guys, Saturday night watching this fight, you're going to hear the words Billy Joe Saunders and slick southpaw to the point where you will be passed out drunk from that. So he has a couple of movabilities, guys. He's just not the Canelo's just on a different level than these guys at 168. It's just the way it is. And of course, the guy who is the greatest in the sport is going to be heavily favored, like Canelo is at this point, and that's where Billy Joe Saunders is. The one thing with Billy Joe Saunders, Jason, and why this fight is taking so long, this fight was supposed to happen around COVID time. I want to say May of last year. COVID wiped all of that out, and then they tried to reschedule it. Billy Joe Saunders needed more time and all other boxing shenanigans. But nonetheless, they're here. They're in town for Saturday in Dallas. And it's one of those fights where Billy Joe Saunders is going to have to pretty much have the fight of his life to beat Canelo. I just don't
He's not, and for the audience on Powers on Sports and for Three Dog Thursday, Saunders is not a big puncher. He is a slick boxer, a southpaw. Canelo is obviously one of the greats. He's got a big punch. He's going to stalk him. And the real question is, can Saunders do enough with hand speed and movement to frustrate him and make this a fight and make this a contest? We'll see. Hey, Marquis, real quick, Saunders, because it's Three Dog Thursday, is a 5.5 to 1 doggy here, a plus 525. Canelo is 7.5 to 1 favorite. I know we're going to talk more about the odds and specifically on the Big Fight Weekend podcast. Another plug there when we talk gambling. Do we even tempt it with Billy Joe Saunders as the underdog here, or do you give him virtually no shot against Canelo Saturday night?
At this point, TJ, I'm not saying he doesn't have a shot, but I'm keeping my money in my pocket on this one. I'm going nowhere near that. The only thing I keep
half jokingly saying is if somebody hides Canelo's boots or if he gets hurt, then it could happen. But other than that, I don't think there's much drama. Jason, we've only got a few minutes left. Go ahead. You got anything else?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you guys both one question. Obviously, we're on the simulcast, Three Dog Thursday, BigFightWeekend.com podcast, and the Powers on Sports podcast. Give the audience a little summary of what's going down in Puerto Rico. You guys have been all over this story the last several days. Felix Verdejo has been arrested and charged with murder of his pregnant girlfriend. Give the audience a little background of how all that story has come together and just the parameters behind the story a little bit.
Okay, we've been all over this, and kudos to my man Marquis Johns, because he had one of the first English-speaking articles up on this when it was all going on Friday in Puerto Rico. They frantically searched for this woman for 2 days, found her horrifically floating dead in a lagoon Saturday near Carolina, Puerto Rico, which is just outside of San Juan. Horrible. And Verdejo is the prime suspect. He's been charged with her kidnapping, her murder. This is a 27-year-old lightweight, 135-pound contender. Marquis, pick it up here. Horrible horrific story where we have been writing about real life horrible murder news on the website. And we'll obviously be talking more about this on our podcast, but this is awful stuff. Verdejo has ruined, it would appear, not only his boxing career, but his life, and has murdered his girlfriend, if all of this is to be believed. Marquis, go ahead real quick.
Yeah, TJ, this is absolutely horrific, guys. Pretty much that episode of Law & Order Criminal Intent where the guy kills his wife and gets away with it for about 45 minutes until they catch him. Yeah, that's what happened here. And it's not good at all. He pretty much killed his mistress, essentially, who was pregnant because she came by, and he already has a prior relationship or is in one currently. So someone had to go, and he made the reckless and irresponsible decision of killing this woman for some reason or another, allegedly. And we'll see what happens from there. But long story short, guys, we'll never see this guy again.
I mean, he's an immensely popular fighter in Puerto Rico, up and coming star. He got beat in his last fight in December in an upset loss. That kind of derailed him a little bit. And now this, I mean, this is just, it has been nonstop in Puerto Rico, the #1 story for the last 5 days. So again, thank you for indulging us as the boxing guys, but it has transcended the rest of sports, Jason. And we only got about 2 or 3 minutes left. Anything else, Jason?
Kudos to you guys. You guys have been all over it, done great reporting on it on all the various platforms. So very much. One more question about this weekend.
Yeah,
this has been a traditional Mexican fighters weekend with Cinco de Mayo weekend all over for many, many years. How do you think, why not Las Vegas as opposed to Jerry World? More because of the attendance, the ability to do it in the stadium? Is that why they...
Marquis, go ahead.
Yeah, Jason, pretty much what it is in Vegas, because there are having shows back in Vegas at the end of this month, but it's because of the attendance caps on it. Pretty much Texas, as we all know, guys, it's an open range. Vegas is only having at most half capacity, or in case for these top rank shows, about 40%. So you got to follow the money on some of this stuff, and that money is clearly in Dallas.
Well, and they've not been able to use outdoor venues in Vegas or the new Allegiant
Raider Stadium.
The Raider Stadium. So their indoor capacity is like 4,000, 3,000, 4,000. If they're trying to have fights there, which they will do later this month, Jason, in the month of May. That ain't 60,000. That ain't 65,000 or greater, which is what we're looking for this Canelo fight to be Saturday night. And that's why it's in Texas. They say everything's bigger in Texas, and now we're going to find out for Canelo.
Last quick thought. Give me what's the word on Floyd Mayweather? Is he coming back to fight? What's he doing?
Marquis?
He's coming back, but it's definitely not a fight, Jason. It is an exhibition against Logan Paul. It is the usual shenanigans from Floyd Mayweather again. Pretty much what's happening, guys. And it just made word that Triller's pushing back their Teofimo Lopez George Kambosos fight that was happening that Saturday. So what's happening is that Floyd's back to take over his pay-per-view king status. And that fight on Sunday, June 6th, is pushing everything in itself out of the picture for it to happen on Showtime.
Interesting. And so again, is Floyd fighting an exhibition, as far as we know, against a YouTuber, failed actor, Logan Paul?
Yes.
This is what we've come to. This is not the boxing we know, but that's bringing in a different audience. So that's what's coming up. Hey, Jason Powers, thank you. Great job. Powers on Sports podcast for Jason. Again, if you're hearing us on the 3 Dog Thursday podcast, if you're seeing us on the YouTube roundtable, again, we're on Jason's podcast as kind of a joint interview, a simulcast on Powers on Sports. Marquis Johns, senior writer, bigfightweekend.com. Thank you as well. I'll promote for my guys one more time here that are seeing us on the YouTube roundtable that you can follow Marquis Johns at Weak Sauce Radio. There he is, and he's mugging for the Detroit Pistons as well.
Oh, man.
Weak Sauce Radio on the Twitter handle. Love that. Jason Powers is JPO Sports on Twitter. If you're only hearing us, or you see him right there on social media, follow him at JPO Sports on the Powers on Sports podcast. Guys, we got to get out of here. Great job on 3 Dog Thursday. Jason, keep knocking them dead. We're on your podcast, Powers on Sports podcast. Marquis, we've done this once. We'll do it again on the Big Fight Weekend podcast to preview more of Canelo and Billy Joe Saunders. Thank you, guys. Great stuff here on 3 Dog Thursday.
Great job. Thanks, TJ. Thanks, Marquis.
TJ. Thanks a lot, guys.